Okay, go ahead. Okay, you all have seen this. Welcome aboard. You have chosen to become one of the million who, with your like-minded fellow travelers, is destined to change the life prospects of people of African descent for the better by becoming a force to be reckoned with in the arenas of economics and influencing public policy decisions in America that affect our people. On to the next one. What is expected of members? We expect members to, number one, provide current contact information as much as they are willing to provide. Register to vote as no party affiliation or its equivalent in your respective area or state, as the case may be. Vote as a block when we call upon you with your fellow members of the 1 million conscious black voters and contributors. Purchase, and we'll be going back incidentally to the purchase of the t-shirt because we can't afford to give them away. Sister Sean and I have gone over that somewhat thoroughly, and that's not working because all we're doing is reimbursing her and I for the money that we put out to have the shirts made, and that's not going into, enough money is not going into the coffers that way, so we've got to give away something much less costly to us, such as a bumper sticker. That's what we're looking at doing now. Call into talk radio programs to urge others to join with us. And that's an important one because that's a way of free advertising. If all of our members around the country make it a habit to call in to local in their areas or the ones that are streamed across the country on the internet and inject or interject the name of the 1 million into the conversation, we get free advertising that way. The more people hear our name, the more name recognition we have, the better for our movement. And contribute an expertise of your choice to the movement. In other words, whatever it is that you have to offer and the context in which you're willing and able to offer that, we want you to offer that to the movement. Those are the basics of what we would look for from someone who would join this movement. A prediction for the movement. I love this one because I believe in every fabric of my being that this is absolutely true. When race-conscious black women do for our race-conscious movement what religious black women have done for the development and growth of the black church, there will be no stopping the rise of African Americans from the horizontal or the supine back to the perpendicular or the vertical. No stopping us. Those sisters become just as determined for this movement of uplift and advancement of our people to succeed as the black women who built the black church. And let there be no confusion as to who built the black church. It was supposedly led by black men. And black men did a lot of organizing, but if it hadn't been for those sisters, they wouldn't have had anything to organize or any results from their organizing efforts. We need the same sort of effort from the women who would be involved with our movement because women do inspire men. Let there be no mistake about that. Again, I can't speak for the millennials, but for us older heads, nothing motivates us more than women. And I don't mean that from a sinister way. I mean that from the way it's supposed to be. It's kind of a quasi-chivalrous kind of thing. Women can make you feel like you want to be a man. You want to protect women. You want to protect your children if you're the right kind of man. Who would have thunk it? This is an important thing too. A lot of people don't know this. I didn't know it until I found it in an encyclopedia. Unlike the Assyrians, the Hittites, and other nations of antiquity, the Egyptians, or they used the term Egyptians because this was the British Encyclopedia, or the Encyclopedia Britannica, so they would call them Egyptians, but we call them Commetans or ancient Egyptians. The Egyptians, and they're talking about our people, were not a warlike people. They were not a warlike people. Economically self-sufficient and preoccupied with what? The enjoyment of the fruits of what? Their industry. Their ideal was to live peaceably. Unfortunately, that also came to be the basis of their demise, because they came in contact with some people who could not appreciate that and saw that as a form of weakness. In much the same way as when the Europeans came to North America, they couldn't survive the winter without the help and the aid and the comfort of the Native Americans, who they found here, and they considered what those Native Americans, good treatment of them to represent was weakness and vulnerability, and they exploited that and took advantage of it. Eventually the same thing happened to our folk. But the question is for you to think about, how does that quote affect you? Knowing that those folks who built and sustained the greatest empires for the longest period of time, we're talking about millennia, not a couple of hundred years, we're talking about thousands and thousands of years, without varying from this particular principle. And way back then, I think this was the 1968 edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica, they admitted that about the ancient Egyptians, without, of course, saying that those ancient Egyptians that they were referred to were an African people or black people. But that's what our people were able to do, without feeling the need to go around the world destroying and conquering and killing, slaughtering people. Next. This is the organization chart that we had developed for the predecessor of the initiative that we're doing now. The Nationalist Black Leadership Coalition, Jim and I founded that along with Sister Monica, some other folks back in, this is what, when she talked about us being in Kernersville, North Carolina, in October of 2007. This was what we developed, and this is what we launched on that occasion. As you notice, the structure called for a council of elders, an advisory council, a spiritual life and assistance commission that would be made up, as you can might well imagine, of an array of different spiritual and religious beliefs or people representing. So there might be some Muslims, and there might be, obviously would have to be some Christians, because most of us come out of that tradition. There might be some Hebrew Israelites if they chose, and whatever other kinds of things that black folks tend to deal with in terms of their religion/spirituality. A chairman and chief executive officer would answer to the Council of Elders. The Council of Elders would be advised by the Advisory Council and the Spiritual Life and Assistance Commission. There would be a chief financial officer and a chief legal officer who would answer to the chairman and chief executive officer. There would be a chief operating officer who would have reporting to him an MIS, I guess nowadays y'all would call it an IT director, and an administrative assistant. And then we, at that point, saw 10 divisions: agriculture, communications, community service, economics, and we would call it today economic empowerment, just to show what we're talking about, education, intelligence and security, Pan-African affairs, that's sort of like the international or the Pan-African component of it, dealing with our brothers and sisters in the diaspora. Public policy division, you notice we don't call it politics. Sister Monica insisted on that, and we bought it. Technology division and a youth affairs division. Then there would be an executive secretary who would primarily serve these 10 divisions here with the assistance of a clerk typist. That would have been an early stage. At some point, of course, we would envision that these divisions would grow to the point where they would probably have to have, each one of these directors would have to have their own secretary and perhaps even their own clerk typist. But you see, way back then, in 2007, we were preparing ourselves, and this was to represent what we refer to as a shadow government. In other words, this is designed similar to the way that you find nations' government structures designed. The United States government, I think, has 13 departments: agriculture, health and human services, et cetera, et cetera. Interestingly enough, for those who might not know it, the Jews have a structure that is also based on governmental structures. with their design and their intent is that in the event, for whatever reason, intentionally or otherwise, the government of a country should falter, they would actually, the Jewish Zionists would be able to step right in and replace all of those positions and all of those functions. Because they've already got their structure in place, their people in place. They got a shadow president of the United States. They got a shadow vice president of the United States. They got a shadow of everybody else in between the president and the vice president and the different departments. They got a shadow for the Supreme Court. They got a shadow for the Congress, all of that. So if somehow or other, all of the white folks that's running everything now and the Negroes that work with them would just drop dead, the Jews would be able to step right in there and wouldn't miss a stroke because they already got it in place. This was our way of designing, conceptually, a shadow government so that in the event that the white folks and the Jews dropped dead, we would be able to step in and run the country. But of course, we've got to build that capacity. So I just show this to you, let you know we ain't playing. We wasn't playing then, and we ain't playing now. So this is on the shelf at the moment, but it's not off the table. It's on the shelf. We will revive that at the appropriate time and under the appropriate circumstances. Next. Now, what can 1 million accomplish? As I love to say, Mr. Garvey's quote, there is nothing common to man that man cannot do. Again, the only proof you need that human beings can do a thing is that some human beings have already done it, and they've done it over and over and over again. So why can't we do it? Next. If we were a nation of about 1 million, what would we compare to, or we would compare to? And I selected 2 countries that had approximately that many population, and to show you what those 2 countries, East Timor has a population of 1.21 million and a gross domestic product, meaning the power or worth of their economy is $1.55 billion annually, with 1.21 million people. The country of Trinidad and Tobago, approximately the same size population, just a couple 100,000 people more, but has a substantially larger gross domestic product of 42.23 billion. Again, with approximately a little few 100,000 more people than our million. So this is to show you, by comparison, what if we were a nation with 1 million population, the kind of thing that we would be able to do in terms of revenue available to us. But keep in mind, and I'll repeat this in other situations, this is talking about 1 million population total. Not 1 million of the best and brightest, which is the million that we're seeking. Not 1 million adults, but 1 million that includes, as Dr. Anderson would say, idiots, midgets, sissies, and a whole bunch of everything. In their million, our million is 1 million of the best and brightest. You hear where we're coming from? So if a million with a multiplicity of types and skills and abilities and talent and just being trifling and shiftless can produce this kind of revenue and economic impact, what could a group such as ours, with 1 million of the caliber and quality of people we're talking about, people represented like those in this room, for example, what could we not do? That's the indication of the potential. If we were a state of 1 million, we would compare to Rhode Island, which has a population of 1.5055 million, gross domestic product of 8.8 billion. Montana with a population of 1.024 million, gross domestic product 10.9 billion. Delaware, population 936,000, gross development product of GDP of 4.7 billion. By comparison, again, keeping in mind, however, the state doesn't have 1 million of the best and brightest. The state just got 1 million, inclusive of everybody and anybody and some things included in that. If we were a city of 1 million, we would compare, for example, to San Jose, California, which has a population, as of the date that this was taken, of 1.016 million. And it's not, shouldn't be GDP there, that's their annual budget. Annual budget of $2.9 billion. Now that's not talking about a one-time grant or a one-time subsidy. Every year, the city of San Jose, California's budget is up around $3 billion. Again, generated by a portion of 1.016 million people. Because again, remember, it's not 1 million of the best and brightest, it's 1 million inclusive of everybody. And if they can generate that kind of money to run a city, what could our 1 million do? Similarly, the city of Austin, Texas has a population of 913,000. Their annual budget is $3.3 billion. A little bit more than the city of San Jose, California. And again, that's 913 million of every kind of person. Some productive, most probably not, but they can still power a $3.3 billion annual budget every year. And of course, as things work, those budgets generally go up every year, though they can sometimes go down. But you can figure that their annual budget is going to be in the neighborhood of $3 billion, generated by a hodgepodge of different types and calibers of people. Next. If we were a union with 1 million members, we would be the 8th largest union in America, behind the Steelworkers Union, which has 1.2 million members, and ahead of the UAW, which has 990,000 members. So now, how do we usually associate unions? With power and influence, right? Especially influence relative to the political process in America. So if the unions can have that kind of influence that we associate with them, with no more, or not many more, and maybe even less people than we got, what stops us from wielding that kind of influence with the same bastions of power within this system? Next. This is another way of looking at the San Jose, California, and the Austin, Texas. Austin, Texas is the 10th largest city in the United States, as I indicated before, with a population just over 1 million, an annual budget of $3.3 billion. The 11th largest city, so we would be, if we had our million, between the 10th and the 11th, I guess we would push San Jose into the 12th position, because we'd be then the 11th, and our budget would be whatever we decided we were willing to have it be. If we were a city of 1 million, of the caliber of people. Now that's another thing to think about. If we're talking about our 1 million being 1 million of the best and brightest quality and caliber of black folk, that could presumably mean that our size of our city would actually be larger than the 1 million, because there's got to be some of Dr. Anderson's kind of folk, some midgets and some other kind of folk in a city. Mm-hmm. But we're talking about our 1 million of a special type and caliber and quality of person. But this just goes again to show you by way of example what those kind of numbers could represent. Net worth of popular religious leaders. I thought this was interesting for folks to know. T.D. Jakes' net worth, according to the internet, $18 million. He has a 30-member church, the Potter's House Church. Creflo Dollar's net worth, and he benefited from the demise of Eddie Long, who became Eddie Short.
Wow.
Creflo Dollar's net worth is $27 million. He's got a 30-member church now. Again, he benefited from the demise of Eddie Long, because a lot of Eddie's people went over to Creflo on the other side of town in Atlanta. Eddie Long's post-scandal net worth is estimated to be, at the time I was looking at this, about $5 million, because not only did he have to pay off all of the boys he was messing with, but his wife got half of what was left, I suppose, because she cut it loose, after that, so I'm told. Minister Farrakhan, again, this is what the internet says his net worth was, $3 million. I find that one a little bit questionable, but that's what they say. And they estimated 50,000 members. So Minister Farrakhan's organization, the Nation of Islam, according to this information, is larger than both T.D. Jakes and Creflo Dollar's. And T.D. Jakes and Creflo Dollar have the largest memberships of these televangelists or mega church guys. There's a bunch of others who have less than 30,000, less than 20,000, etc. But these are the biggest ones, and to show you that. So again, this is just to show you what people with a lot less numbers than we are talking about having are capable of doing with those lesser numbers. So what should we not be able to do with our 1 million? You follow? And another way of looking at the same thing is, as I've talked with some of you about, Les the Motivator Brown has a saying that I love. He says, always shoot for the moon. Because even if you fail to reach the moon, you will land among the stars. So our moon is represented by the 1 million number. And we're going to keep on shooting for the 1 million. But what if, as I love to say, we don't reach our 1 million and we only reach 750,000? How would that have us comparing to everybody else who's doing well while being black? What if we fell even further short and only got 500,000? How would we then compare with all the other biggies in terms of black organizations with a followership? What if we fell even further short and only got 250,000? How would that compare? But let's say we fall all the way and got only 10% of what we're seeking. Instead of 1 million, we got 100,000. We would still be twice as large as the largest existing black organization, membership organization. So what does that mean? We got a win-win-win proposition. Because failure to achieve our ultimate objective is not failure. It would simply mean we'd have to make adjustments as to how we reach the monetary numbers that we want to reach. So for example, if we only had 500,000, instead of asking for $20 from each one of our members to get our $20 million annual budget, we'd have to ask them for a whole lot more, a whole $40. So 500,000 people given a $40 membership contribution would generate the same $20 million annual budget that we could get from 1 million asking them for 20. Accordingly, if it dropped down to all the way to 100,000, then we'd have to ask each of our 100,000. Just imagine the caliber of that 100,000 would have to be. And so we'd have to jump it way up and ask them for a whole $200. 100,000 people $200 annual now, not weekly or monthly, annually. And still have our 20 million. And nobody can dictate to us to say that we have to stick with the 20 million annual budget figure. We can adjust it the way we want. And I know we're not used to doing whatever we want to do because we think only white folks do that. But we changing the paradigm, as the brothers on Time for an Awakening say every Sunday night. Time for a new paradigm. A new kind of black folk who think differently, who have no limitations as to what they believe that black folks are capable of doing. And like we used to say back in my day, when I was y'all's age, it ain't nothing but a thing. Because we weren't besmirched with that inferiority complex. I was telling the brother, we had this thing that, this was in the North, in the South, we afraid of white folks with good reason. But in the North, we weren't afraid of that. And the thing was, a brother would not want to fight either a girl, a sissy, or a white boy. Why? You couldn't improve on your rep by fighting a girl. In fact, you didn't fight girls when I was young. That was just a no-no. We didn't do that. You're supposed to be able to whip a girl because she's supposed to be the weaker sex. So what can you gain by fighting a girl? We believe that cowards even hit girls, much less fight. So you can't fight a girl because ain't no way to win. You can whoop her if you wanted to, but then that you would be the scourge of the neighborhood. Oh, well, Larry fought a girl, man. You see, then you get into the Georgie Porgy kind of thing. Georgie Porgy put in the fire, fought the girls and made them cry, but when the boys came out to play, Georgie Porgy ran away. So you didn't want no Georgie Porgy reputation back in those days. You didn't want to fight a sissy. Number one, even though a sissy was a sissy, he was still a boy. And he might fire you up. So if you fight the sissy whoop you, you got to move out of town. And I mean a long way from town because everybody would wonder how close you may be so they can go find you to fight you too. They work on building their rep. So you didn't want to fight no sissy because you couldn't win that either. Whipping the sissy, you're supposed to be able to whoop a sissy. And the chances were at least 50-50 that the sissy could whoop you. So you got to be careful with what you do. And you didn't want to fight a white boy because you couldn't gain on your reputation for fighting a white boy. You beat the white boy you were supposed to beat. You were supposed to beat. Now this I'm talking about where I grew up, in Utica, New York, upstate New York. I don't know how it was with you all in Philadelphia and other places in the North, but that's the way it was where I grew up. Now that didn't mean you didn't fight white boys, but you better doggone well have your stuff together because if you lost the fight, you couldn't hold your head up in polite company until you found another one you could whoop and redeem yourself. You see. That's the way. We weren't afraid of things. We were willing to try things. And I think that your generation, those of you who are younger, are standing on the shoulders of my generation and those before mine who did have those kind of traits and attributes about them in terms of their relationship to these other people. Okay? U.S. states where blacks are 25% of the total population or more. Now this gets into this thing that you hear people talking about, like the Muslims and the provisional government of the Republic of New Africa used to talk about getting the government to give us a certain number of states and then we would move there and create our own country kind of stuff. Of course it ain't gonna happen, they ain't giving them nothing. Remember those are the same people who fought a civil war among themselves to keep from letting some states escape from the Union. So they ain't giving us nothing. But that doesn't mean that we can't appropriate a few states if we were shrewd enough and smart enough and strategic enough in our thinking and our actions to do it. So you take a look at where would the best prospects be. The state of Mississippi has the largest percentage of black people in the population. 37.3% of the total population of Mississippi is black, and that number of blacks in Mississippi was just over 1 million. That number sound familiar? So suppose we were to get our 1 million people, we're gonna all move to Mississippi. I'm just using this as an example. We double the number of blacks in Mississippi. What does that do? If we were 37% of the population with 1 million, does that not suggest that we double our percentage of the population with 2? Correspondingly, what if we got only 500,000 of our million to relocate to Mississippi? What does that do to our percentage? Do we increase this by 50%? Do we take over numerical control of Mississippi? You see? Similarly, Louisiana, 31.9, you might as well say 32% of the population in the state of Louisiana is black. Total number of blacks there is 1.452 million. Again, same thought. What if we had some of our folks just descend on Louisiana? You see, what would happen if we did that? Georgia, with 31.4% of the total, and 3.150 million black folks live in the state of Georgia. Again, consider what the implications of any portion, and Georgia is a more realistic, for most of us, possibility for this kind of migration, because Atlanta had already established a reputation of being a sort of black Mecca, for upwardly mobile blacks especially. So, it's not unrealistic to think that we could get a substantial percentage of our 1 million to move to Atlanta, because you're not asking them to go out into the country where the rednecks have a lot of influence. Because a lot of black folks don't want to be messing around out there in the woods. But we don't mind going to a big city. So just think, again, this is possibility thinking time, people. That's what this one is about, possibility thinking. Maryland, 29%, just under 30%. You see how many black folks are in Maryland. South Carolina, 28%, almost 28.5%, almost 1.3 million. Alabama, 26.3% of the population is black, and about 1.25 million black folk in the state of Alabama. So you get to see the potential. Now keep in mind also, we're talking about our 1 million, but we also realize that our 1 million is going to have influence with some other black folk. So you might be able to multiply the effect of the 1 million by 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times. Just like when the people who used to circulate newspapers, for those of you who know about that, their circulation would be calculated on a combination of the subscriptions that they had, where people actually had subscribed, and how many times they claimed that each one of those newspapers got passed around to other people. So they may have a subscription of, say, 100,000, but they would insist that the paper gets passed to at least 5 people, so they would say their circulation is 500,000. You see? So if we had had a million members, our influence is going to be beside that. So it's not just as though whether we can move any percentage or any number of our million to one of these places, but we will be able to influence some other black folk, especially if we go in there ahead of them and create some opportunities for them to go there and get some gainful employment. But we got to be thinking seriously and acting seriously like grown people if we're going to do things like this. But again, some folks say, well, you know, niggas can't do that. Well, niggas probably can, but black folk can. And those are 2 different kind of folk. You don't believe me? Ask Chris Rock. There's nothing common to man that man cannot do. There's already people in these states. You know, these are not flies and roaches. Well, at least not all of them. Not all of them. U.S. metropolitan areas. If we don't want to be squeezed into one little city, well, then flex our muscles and spread our elbows out. Well, blacks are 25% or more of the population. Jackson, Mississippi, Antar said.
Almost half.
The metropolitan area there is 48% black. And the population of blacks in that metropolitan area is a little over 250,000. That would suggest if we just sent 250,000 of our 1 million into the Jackson metropolitan area, yeah, if we 48%, almost half, with only 250,000, and we sent 250,000, let me say we got to be close to 100%, pushing 100%. We can not only take over the city of Jackson, but we take over the Jackson metropolitan area. Is that beyond the realm of reason to think? Huh? Talk to me, somebody. Am I the only one seeing this potential?
See it, think big. You make it happen.
Okay. Memphis, Tennessee. Metropolitan area again. Blacks make up 46% of the total population, and the total number of blacks there is 601,000. Once again, if we got 400,000 of our 1 million to move to Memphis, Tennessee metropolitan area, that would jump up to 1 million, and that would push us up, what, to about 75, 80%? Something like that? And so you can figure it out with the rest of them. Y'all see where we're going here? You getting the picture yet? Now, are you getting scared or are you getting excited? I say like Minister Farrakhan used to say when he'd be talking to the Christian church and the people in there get so quiet because of the things he's saying. He said, what y'all doing scared? I'm the one doing the talking. Metropolitan areas where blacks are 25 or more percent. Oh, that's a continuation of the other one. So you just see the continuation of it. Incidentally, these all of these slides that we have had presenters use today, we want to make these available to leadership people especially, but any other members whose interest in and concern for wanting to build this movement is such that they want to have this information available to them. We want to make that available. Okay. Active duty military personnel by branch. I thought this was an interesting one. The Army, according to the information that I got off the internet, has 456,651 active duty military personnel. The Marine Corps, 182,000. The Navy, 276, Air Force, 261, the Coast Guard, 32, for a total of 1.174 million. Sound familiar, the number again? So there would be as many of us as there are active duty military personnel protecting the other 318 million citizens in this country. If we wanted to do some damage, could we do some damage? But more importantly, if we wanted to do some good, could we do some good? Because there's going to be an element of a security force developed among our 1 million. We have to, because we will have things that we have to protect. I hope I'm not scaring y'all with that kind of stuff. I'm trying to be as diplomatic in my talk as I can, because I don't always feel diplomatic towards these folks. The total number, I like this one. Total number of sworn police in America, 633,506. Now that's the sworn police officers. And I'm not sure, I couldn't be absolutely certain that that includes sheriff's deputies. But I do believe that it includes municipal police personnel and state police personnel. For whatever reason, they don't like to give you the sheriff's information, probably because of this conspiratorial thing. More sheriff's deputies kill black folks apparently than any other of the levels, more than the city police and more than the state troops. The sheriff's people just go around shooting up black folks. So that may be it, but there's only, I would say only, because our numbers would be greater than that. There's only 630, and what we can do is, like I tried to scheme up on something when I was in Utica, that's why they chased me out of town, where we assigned a bad or rogue cop to every one of the brothers in our organization. and said your job was to take that one out. And we would reduce at least the road cops by the number of brothers who were willing to take theirs out. You see what I'm saying? I'm just showing you by comparison what numbers mean, Sister Monica. When we have our 1 million, when I tell y'all there is no limit to what we could do, I'm not saying we would do it, what we could do with those kind of numbers. Just share on the basis of the numbers. That's why I want to do this comparison with you all. Next one. Okay. We'll go through these rather quickly because you should already be familiar with these, so go to the next one. The important documents that everybody in our organization, movement anyway, should make sure that they have read and reviewed and maybe even re-review them from time to time. Even I go back and reread these things from time to time. The first is the U.S. Constitution the supreme law of the land? Second, the niggerization of black folks. Excess versus surplus. Do black Americans have battered race syndrome? The clean glass process begins. What if? What is a conscious black voter? The conundrum of consciousness and capital. Those documents, if you haven't read them already, I encourage you to read them. If you've read them already, I encourage you to read them at least one more time until that stuff sinks in. Guidance paper number 1. This obviously has to do with the duties and responsibilities of state representatives. Educate yourself on what the movement is about, but the blind can't lead the blind. Identify local coordinators to recruit and organize municipalities and subdivisions within your state. In other words, your responsibility is to recruit somebody in the local area divisions or subdivisions such as cities, counties, villages, towns, etc., wherever there's some black folks sufficient to represent, to be representative of black folk. You want to try to build leadership there so that we build our movement, our organizational structure from the ground up as opposed to from the top down. Participate in regular conference calls with the Dean of State Representatives, Baba West Johnson. And the purpose for that, as I've said to you before, and as I'm sure he reminds you every week, is so that we share best practices with each other. So if something is working in Virginia, or as you earlier today was singing the praises of Brother Marcus and his team, you want to learn from some of those experiences and successes they're having. So the reason for these weekly conference calls between the state reps is so that they can share best practices and, of course, reinforce each other, get to know each other at least by, telephonically, and eventually, so when you do come together, if you haven't met already, each other already, you can get to meet the people on the other end of the voices that you hear. How can you educate yourself? You can familiarize yourself with the historical context of the movement. Where did this movement come from? It just didn't start when Jim and I started what we now call the 1 million conscious black voters and contributors about 1.5 years ago at this point. But it goes back to when Jim and Monica and Brother Donnie and I met each other for the first time. Jim and I had met before, but for the first time in December of 2006 in Cincinnati. Where did the concept of the 1 million come from? You've heard us talk about that before. Who brought it forth and why? Those questions are answered in the document that Brother Stan Merriweather and his lady put together for us, which turned out to be our Q&A, or rather frequently asked questions document, I think it is. Keys to recruiting and organizing. Again, I know this is kind of difficult thing for the millennials to deal with because y'all are not touchy-feely people the way we used to be. You know, we like to get up close and personal with each other and get to know each other. Y'all prefer to deal with each other long distance by and large. But we do need to identify local coordinators to recruit and organize. We need to know what the total estimated black population is in each state. You've seen that I've already compiled that information and determined what 2% of that number would be, and that would be your target. 2% of the black folks in your state is your target for the state. 2% of the black people in Philadelphia is your target for Philadelphia, and so on and so forth. Send potential members to visit the website to educate themselves, register, and order a t-shirt. The original objective, of course, our idealized objective was that we would have 100,000 registrants by June 15th of last year, 2015, 500,000 registrants by the end of this past December 2015, 1 million registrants by June 20th or June 30th of this year. Now, interestingly enough, obviously we didn't reach either one of these numbers, nor did we necessarily expect to. Was it possible, expectations notwithstanding? Sure, it was possible, but we didn't strike a responsive chord in our folk for a bunch of reasons. But we have not been discouraged or dismayed by any of that. We're still stroking. And guess what? Based on what Brother Donnie was telling us a few minutes ago in his presentation, it's still possible to hit this number by June 30th. I don't know whether y'all listened to those kind of numbers the brother was throwing around. And I don't know whether he was puffing smoke, but he didn't seem to be. But this is still possible. But even if we don't, what did I just get through saying about Brother saying always aim for the moon, because even if you fall short, you're going to land among the stars. So even if we don't get to the 1 million, and even if we only hit a 500,000 or 750,000 or 250,000 or 100,000, you notice I ain't saying nothing about nothing under 100,000. Because that would only be 10% of the total that we're seeking. So we don't want to be too willing to give up on winning. You know what I'm saying? Because some of y'all will catch on and get comfortable if I start keep on lowering these numbers down. I don't want y'all to get comfortable with accepting less than what we want. We want 1 million. We want 1 million. Let's not have any confusion. But I just want to make sure y'all know that to not get 1 million doesn't mean that we get stopped in our tracks. Regular state representative conference call with Barbara West Johnson. We talked about that. We do our monthly organizational conference call. And incidentally, let me emphasize, folks, the monthly organizational conference calls are what we do on those months when we don't come together for a physical gathering. Once we get our state structures in place, I don't expect us to necessarily be interested or needing to do monthly conference calls, because the interaction will be taking place amongst people actually in physical presence of one another, but at the state level or at the subdivision level within states. That's where we're headed with this. So these are practical ways of doing what needs to be done in the absence of being in a position to do it the way that it should ideally be done. Ideally, we want people in physical contact with each other. Because y'all have seen how this affects all of us when we have these kinds of congenial comings together. Guidance paper number 2, coffee clatches to town hall meeting. We've talked about what a coffee clatch is. Again, I know that's an unfamiliar concept with most black people, because coffee clatches actually were started and utilized mostly by white people who engage in the political process differently than we do. We tend to wait until election time and vote. That's how, as Sister Monica was saying, we vote. But white folks work on campaigns. That's how they earn their stripes and pay their dues. So that if their candidate wins, then they are owed something for having contributed effort, sweat equity, if not funded. In fact, the matter, sweat equity in that sense is more valuable to the candidate and the party than voting. Because they're convinced that they're buying your votes anyway with the money that they raise to influence how you vote. So they figure your voting is just the way they have determined that you're going to vote, by how they maneuver and manipulate you. In our situation in this country, the Democrats figure they already got you in their hip pocket and their ears. So they don't have to do anything to court you. The only thing they're concerned about is getting you to turn out on election day. The turnout is what they're concerned about with black folk. How you going to vote once you turn out, they don't have any question or doubt about that. Yeah. And there's no reason for them to have any question or doubt, because y'all going to do exactly what you're supposed to do.
And that's actually like their farm system, their farming system. That's where they gain candidates, new candidates. If you work in the field and you put your sweat in, then they identify you as a person that you work with. That's why many times black people are left out of that process, because we don't do that.
Absolutely.
So we aren't candidate material because we haven't put in the effort in their view.
That's a dynamic point to make. Absolutely correct. She's absolutely correct. Background on coffee klatches. A klatch is a gathering characterized by informal conversation. Coffee refers to the fact that when these white folks do these things, they usually serve coffee, cookies, and shit like that, usually stuff like that. It's been used very successfully in partisan electoral campaigns, as I've already mentioned. Benefits of coffee klatches. It's a means of informing citizens about candidates and his or her platform. It builds grassroots support for the candidacy. Again, as Sister Monica said, it also helps them to identify future prospects for upward mobility in a party structure, whether it's as a candidate for office or as someone who is going to be, for example, maybe managing campaigns. Because managers of campaigns get paid. And it's a pretty good paying deal. Expands the candidate's name recognition. That's very key, and that's why we also talk about the importance of everybody calling into these talk shows, because we need name recognition for our movement. People tend to appreciate having somewhat of importance meet with them up close and personal. I can tell you from experience, that's true even of the millennials. How do I know that? Because I ran a public charter school for 16 years, and I was there. Even when I was no longer the headmaster of the school, I was the chairman of the board, and I was there almost as regular as when I was the headmaster. Who was I dealing with? I was dealing with millennials, the parents of the children, most of my staff, and certainly the children themselves. So I know those rascals, and I know their mamas, and that occasional daddy who might have thought that he could come up there and intimidate somebody until he got there. But even, especially our children, love the personal touch. I don't mean the physical touch. I'm talking about the fact that you interact with them. Benny, am I lying? Brother Lance, am I lying?
Not at all.
Do they respond?
Yes.
Especially once they know that you're genuine.
Yes.
Once they know you're genuine, you become, in effect, if you're a male, the father figure for those children that they don't have otherwise.
Trust.
And that's because humans are social animals. We're social creatures. We're not designed to be loners. People who are good at being alone have made an adjustment, and they can handle being alone. Most of us don't want to be alone, no kind of how. Even if it's only one other person, preferably of the opposite sex. Oh, that
Sissy's alive.
Organizing a coffee klatch. You need an individual or a couple who is willing to invite 6 to 12 of their friends, family, and co-workers to come in and listen to the presentation. The host or the presenter will perform the introductions and give an overview of the 1 million. After the presentations, the floor should be open to comments and questions from the attendees. This kind of interaction is excellent for developing bonding between our representatives who are there and the people who were there. Black folks tend to be starved for personal attention. And one thing that you'll find, and I think this is even true today, if someone would attest it, the difficult thing with black folks is not to get in their house, but to get out of the house once you've been there and you ain't stole nothing from them, or you ain't robbed them, or pulled a gun or a knife on them. Then they figure it's safe And they appreciate the fact that someone cared enough about them to come into their home and talk to them about something other than foolishness. Then they're going to offer you some more coffee or some more drinks or whatever it is that they got for you in the black perspective to keep you from leaving. Because they are starved for that kind of personal attention that is non-threatening. Don't take my word for it. Try to prove me wrong. Try it and prove me wrong. And I'll bet you dollars to a donut you lose the bet. After the presentations, we want to have questions from the attendees. Handouts should be provided to them. In other words, always leave them with something to take with them, or if the ones who's not living there, and for the ones who live there, for them to keep, they may keep it around on the coffee table or something. So when other people come, what's that? Oh, some people came here the other night, child, and they were talking about this and that. Oh, it was real nice. I was so happy that they came in. We had a good time. I didn't know this, and I didn't know. That's the kind of conversation you have people. See, I've been there and done this already. So this is not talking stuff out of the sky. I have lived a full life. Hear me? I ain't been shucking and diving for the last 76 years. I've been living a full life. Would you agree, bro? Recruiting at coffee clutches. Encourage attendees to visit the website. Always do that. Promote the selling of promotional t-shirts and books to finance the campaign. Keep in mind, this is an entrepreneurial movement by intent. It's an entrepreneurial movement. We want people to purchase things that we produce and provide to them so that we generate revenue without having to hit people heavy in their pockets for dues and membership fees and things like that. We would love to keep the membership at $20 annual contribution. But that would mean we have to get our million so that the $20 adds up to 20 million bucks. But other than that, we want to be able to generate revenue stream by things that we can sell, whether it's product or services. And we do want to, as I think Brother Marcus pointed out, we want to create some conscious black millionaires. Create them. That has to do with Jim's piece about the conundrum of consciousness and capital. Ask attendees to consider hosting a clutch in their homes. In other words, you want these to be sequential or domino effect. Each one of these you would hope would produce at least one more. Somebody who attended this one, you would hope that they would be willing to host one and invite their circle of friends and neighbors and associates and whatnot. The 1 million representatives should wear their organization t-shirts to the events. So it's always good to advertise and promote, what we're doing. By the way, if anybody here needs a t-shirt, I got some in the car. You can get it. Town hall meetings are more structured than coffee clutches. Minimum attendance that you would want to get to a town hall meeting would be about 100 persons. Sign-in sheets are a must because you want to have access to information to follow up with. The event should be videotaped if possible. Black-owned media outlets should be invited to attend, though they probably won't come. Special invites should go to HBCUs that are in the area if you have any. Invite them to attend. Should seat slightly fewer than the number of persons expected. What you always want to try to do is have standing room only. So you want to use a venue that is somewhat smaller than the size of the crowd that you hope will turn out. So for example, if we're thinking that we want 100 people and we have reason to believe we can get 100 people, then the venue you want to seat about 75, 80 people. It's always good when black folks do something, especially conscious black folk, because someone is always looking for something to criticize us for. Or to show how we're failing. Right. So if people have to say, well, damn, nigga had a standing room only crowd. You see? But if the room holds 75 people and you got 100 people squeezed in, then somebody got to be standing up. So it looks like you had a turnaway crowd. And that's important psychologically. Especially when you're conscious people. Because other folks, they don't care about that. Because some white folks done paid the bills anyway. With us, they're trying to find reason to find fault. Arrangements for necessary equipment should be made in advance. So we shouldn't be scurrying around once we're there trying to get this, that, or the other that we need for what we're trying to do. The event should be videotaped again if at all possible. First 30 to 45 minutes should be an overview of the movement, and then 2 hours set aside for questions and comments, because you know I like to have interactions with the people, because that's what we really want to get at people, and give people an opportunity to engage in conversation about something substantive and something meaningful, and then say 15 minutes toward the end for concluding comments from the presenter. Local protests. If there are any, like the Black Lives Matter people in your area and they're doing a protest about something, we should try to capitalize on that by getting out there and passing out some of our propaganda material or information about our movement. Not going out there to join in the protest, because we ain't protest people. But you want to go out there and spread the word. It just might be a handful of folks out there who are good prospective candidates for the 1 million. Literature that you would want to distribute at such events would be media, well, any events that we go to. Media packets or kits, info packets for members, black papers by myself and Jim Klingman, and the event program. States with members, and this is current, right? Because she just redid it. So you have, Donnie went over that already, so that's the same information as the show. Guidance paper number 3, you should be familiar with this one. Who should join your 1 million? You are still black and proud, and still say it loud. You should love black people and love yourself being, you still love black people and love yourself being black, which is not true of most black people, as I'm sure you know. So it would be different if you feel that way. You're a black male who understands the gender role of a responsible black male. You are a black female who understands the gender role of a responsible black woman. You are a black senior citizen who is sick and tired of being sick and tired. You are a black senior citizen who is fed up with having been down so long that getting up just don't cross my mind no more. You are a black youth who does not want to have to bleach your skin or wear foreigner's hair in order to feel proud of how you look. You realize that racism and white supremacy are not only capable of committing genocide against black people, but is actively engaged in doing so right now. You realize that increasing numbers of police murdering blacks is proof that genocide is underway. You realize that nobody is going to save us black people but us, if we are to be saved. You have the presence of mind to know that collectivism will trump selfishness and individualism every time. Ask them Jews. You don't take them out. You know that protecting black children is the responsibility of black adults. You know that in the greater scheme of things, black males have failed to develop the capacity and the will to protect black women and children. You got to change that. That's unnatural. You know that the best and brightest, most gifted and talented persons our race produces must commit their talent, skills, and gifts to the uplift and advancement of our own people collectively. I want to remind y'all, and I'll say it as many times as I have an opportunity to say it, one of the biggest problems facing black people in America is that the best and brightest people we produce must of necessity go work for the very system of racism, white supremacy that oppresses us, which means they are contributing to the strengthening and the sustaining of the system that we say we want to see dismantled. So we're the best friends white folks got. Which also means then that those people and their talent, skills, and ability are not available to us. And we need them more than the white man needs them. So there again is the reason why this movement must succeed, because the only way we're going to compete for the talented people that we produce is to be able to offer them alternative employment. We can't expect any significant or substantial numbers of the quality of people we need on the front lines to do so as volunteers. It ain't gonna happen. Not because they don't want to, but because the first order of business is they gotta take care of those children, their wives, their families. They gotta keep a roof over their heads, clothes on their back, shoes on their feet, and food on the table. So it's just the facts of life, folks. So we're not willing to develop or able to develop the capacity to provide alternative employment. If we want Sister Lori to not have to be worried about whether that crazy little coon gonna shoot her, we ought to be able to offer her alternative employment something. And that's what we got to work on, whether it's here or someplace else. So we may have to start checking with our members in 36 states to see where we might find you a job just to get you out of there, even if it's just temporary. Because see, none of us is going to be out there, unfortunately, to be your bodyguard. And I'm still kind of shaky listening to what you said about that situation and hearing you almost break down, because I know you ain't no crier. So that troubled me. That's why I didn't want us to keep talking about that. You understand that the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution allows slavery to continue unabated in the guise of a person having been duly convicted of a crime, and you are fully aware that the current rate of criminalization and mass incarceration of blacks in America's prison jail system is the beginning of our re-enslavement. You understand that no existing political party prioritizes the best interests of African Americans as a collective or a whole. They'll take care of the Steve Harveys and the basketball players and those kind of folk, but they ain't got no use for the rest of us. You understand that leadership is as leadership does, and this means that the best leaders for the black collective must come from the ranks of those who place and hold the best interests of black people foremost and uppermost. You understand that black people must develop the mindset, the capacity, and the will to finance our own racial uplift organizational efforts, that we must replace dependency on others with self-reliance and self-determination. Training session 2, platform planks. Internal planks, and the Brother Sam has redone these and he's put them in this 3 categories. Internal planks, 1 million members will practice and believe in. Go ahead, I'm going to go through these quickly because you all should be familiar with the planks by now. Proposed revised planks, platform planks. The 3 proposed categories are internal, constitutionally, and civilian-based, having to do with law enforcement, reciprocity to American citizens. Rationalization for such categories: number 1, the 1 million in particular and black American citizens in general can do the planks in this category ourselves. In other words, these are not in there because we will be seeking to negotiate those with any candidates. These are just there to illustrate and demonstrate what we believe and what we intend to do, etc., as sending a message to people. Category 2, the planks that are designed to ensure that we the people are given due process of law, since this is supposed to be a nation of laws. According to the supreme law of the land, the United States Constitution. That's why we have declared ourselves to be the Black Constitutional Patriots, and we will start a Black Constitutional Patriots party, our own independent black political party, since nobody else seems to want to do that. Category 3, these planks deal with reciprocity. Those who contribute properly to the general welfare, culture, and fabric of this nation should have the same general rights to the contract with America that conservatives claim all Americans should have with the local, state, and federal governments. Those who would join the 1 million campaign would be required to register to vote as not having political party affiliation. You know that. Go on to the next one. Insofar as both the current and previous federal administration saw fit to bail out Wall Street, we wanted to bail out everybody who owes student loan debt. We want student loan debt forgiven, period. Not negotiated or decreased, forgiven. Amnesty, just like they did with Wall Street, the big banks. 1 million conscious black voters and contributors want the Juneteenth celebration to be recognized as a national day of observance. Not a holiday, but a national day of observance. Public protests against deadly misconduct, black economics activism. What we're saying here essentially is that we want people who are going to go and protest, since they insist on protesting, to make sure that they try to, at best they can, direct the money that they're going to spend while they're somewhere protesting to some black folks or some other non-white folks at the very least. They may not be able to find any righteous black folks, but at least they ain't going to find too many righteous white folks or Arabs or East Indians or Koreans either. So try to give it to some black folks if you can. Cooperative economic empowerment, we support, of course, the Us Lifting Us Economic Development Cooperative, or ULU, and they will be meeting for their annual event a week from today, in fact, and I hope to go up there and share that occasion with them. Hot Black Coffee Party think tanks. I'm not sure what's happening with Brother Louis Ali on this one. I do know that the minister essentially gave him a cease and desist when he was doing these think tanks around the country. He had gotten up to 3 of them because our brother Wes Johnson, Baba West, was assisting him with those. And they were anti-integration. That was the theme of the think tanks that he was doing around the country. They stopped him after the 3rd one that he did in Houston. He had done Baton Rouge, he'd done Washington, D.C., and when he did the one in Houston, the minister happened to be in Houston at the same time he was and told him no more. So I haven't heard much of anything that Brother Lewis has been doing since then with the Hot Black Coffee Party, No Sugar, No Cream. I think my belief is that it has to do with the fact that the minister reached out to a multiplicity of people, a so-called diverse grouping of people to attend the 10-10-15 event, including gays and Hispanics, Native American, a bunch of other people, and that would appear to be a conflict with some of his people going around the country talking about the evils of integration, where he is reaching out to people to integrate, and his people are running around here talking about this. So rather than wait around for someone who has to get clearance from somebody else to do something righteously black for all black people, we're going to go ahead and do what we need to do, which is to create an independent black political party ourselves. And then if they want to join us, we certainly will welcome them with open arms. Constitution and civilian-based law enforcement. Misconducted, to me, this is one of the most important planks we got in our platform. We, at the proper time, we're going to call upon our members, when we have enough of them, to create a fund. I call it a legal offense fund. You know, usually you have black folks talking about a legal defense fund, because we always on the defense. I don't like to be on the defense. You know, because somebody hits you first, you may not be able to stand up. I want to get in the first lick, even if I have to run after that one. But we don't want no legal defense fund. We want a legal offense. We want to go on the offensive against these murderous cops. And what we want to do is sue all of those 37 or 39 states in the Union that have passed laws that directly contradict the Bill of Rights and other pro-citizen positions that are in the U.S. Constitution. In other words, what the cops are doing is unconstitutional. And if the Constitution is in fact the supreme law of the land, why are the states allowed to pass laws that contravene what is supposed to be the supreme law of the land? You see, so we want to sue, but we have to have money. We can't rely on a bunch of lawyers or a lawyer to volunteer to take on such a monumental task as that. But I guess you what, if you can wave some money at them, they'll jump all over. You see, so this is a critical one as far as I'm concerned. Class action, oh, that's the one. What was the other one? Misconduct insurance. We want cops to have the same kind of insurance to protect citizens against their abuse as doctors in the medical profession have to have malpractice insurance. That's what that one's about. We want the cop, and we don't want the government to have to pay for it. We want the cops to have to pay for it themselves, just like doctors have to buy their own malpractice insurance. Or the unions could either buy it for them or help them pay for it. And if we can break the union by forcing them to help their murderous Gestapo buy malpractice insurance, that wouldn't be a bad side benefit of doing that. But we want to force them to have to provide themselves malpractice insurance. And you know what happens? Anytime you have an accident with your car insurance, right? Your insurance rates will go up. So every time one of these fools does some harm to somebody, and there's a suit against him for his malpractice insurance, guess what? His premiums go up. Do you think that might put a damper on their tendency to kill some black folks?
As long as their salaries don't go up.
Hmm?
As long as their salaries don't go up.
Where the salary going? Where the increase in salaries going to come from?
Well, yeah, that's the citizens. They taking it out of the citizens' money.
The citizens ain't. When it comes down to the citizens having to pay money out of their pocket, they're less inclined to want to give that up. That's why you have these so-called cameras on everywhere, but especially on, say, intersections. That is one of the biggest revenue generators in the country right now for local government. Is those cameras that take a picture of your license plate if you go through on the yellow light or some stuff like that, or if you go through a red light. That kind of thing. So, in some places, including the state of Florida, they want to outlaw those. So how are those people going to make up for the revenue stream that will be lost because they can no longer use those cameras? You think they want to be paying cops more money when they're already trying to figure out how to balance their budgets? No, they don't want to do that. Now, if they can do it some other kind of way, they'll do it. But with the displeasure that white folks are having with having to pay for those tickets, and those tickets are high. You know, they start at about $150, $175, and they go up to $300, $400, $500 for those things. So that's white folks. Most of the people getting caught on those red light cameras are white folks. But black folk know how to dodge that kind of stuff. We know what the doggone things are. We go out, turn and go down the side street and come around on the other side and then keep on going down. But white folk just go straight on till they get caught. And they're paying a lot of money. So they're upset with the red light cameras. I talked about that one the last time. Unlawful stop recording. This is one where the brother had designed this thing. I don't know where it is right now, but it's an excellent idea. Because what it would do is citizens would be able to wear the devices that would record their interaction with the police as opposed to relying on the police camera that's on his dashboard or something that he's going to be wearing, which he can flip on and off when he wants. You know, that's silly any dog. If I was a cop, I wouldn't even turn the damn thing off. So I know crazy cops, they ain't going to turn it off. They know what's going to be the consequences of that. But if the people have it, and the way the brothers designed the thing, it is not necessarily noticeable. Because you know they'll try to take them from you. If your cell phone they want to take. But suppose the doggone thing is in your lapel, or is in a lot of brothers wear jewelry, right? They're supposed to send your neck jewelry. You see what I'm saying? The point is that you have ways that you can record and he has it designed so that it automatically uploads to the internet. So even if they do discover it and take it from him, well, it's already out there. You busted. That's what that one's all about. And we are supporting it, brother. Community control of police, we're calling for the reinstitution of viable and substantive police community review boards. Not the weak ones that don't have any power, but those that actually will have power to control the police conduct. The right to community-based self-defense, again, this really isn't one that we would need anybody's permission to do. This is talking about really the kind of thing we were talking about with Brother Reggie with the 10,000 guys that, what's his name, tried to organize in Philly. Yeah. Kenny Gamble. That's what this is talking about, that sort of thing. But it's really an encouraging of responsible black men to sort of like go in and help to take back the streets in our communities and make them more safe for our people, so to speak. Amending the 13th Amendment, you've heard Jim and I talk about this one. This is a recent addition. We're calling for the 13th Amendment to be changed and to eliminate that clause which says that except as punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted. We want that taken out of the 13th Amendment because that really neutralizes what goes that precedes it. because it simply means that you change the form of slavery. And right now, with the American incarceration system having over 2.5 million people that they admit that's incarcerated, the largest number in the entire world, more than most other countries together. You know who a disproportionately high percentage of those people are. So we want that whole thing changed so that they can't use the prison system as a new form of slavery or enslavement. Reciprocity to American citizens. Plank number 12, student loan debt forgiveness. Y'all know I'm big on this one. I want to see them have to completely eradicate student debt.
Yes.
No negotiation, just eradicate it. Whatever is owed, you no longer owe it. Santa Claus then came and gave you this.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Restore all citizens' right to vote. We're supporting the groups that are fighting hard to get felons who have paid their so-called debt to society and have been released from prison to have all of their citizens' rights restored, not just the right to vote, but all of their rights that any other citizen is entitled to. In other words, if supposedly if they've been released, they have paid that debt to society. So why do you continue to punish them even after they've been released back into society? Either they're ready to be released or they're not. If they're not ready, keep them in there. Reparations for enslavement and restoration of humanity. We support reparations for slavery, plain and simple. Support for black farmers. We support the black farmers in their fight against the USDA, Department of Agriculture, which has claimed, and you know, Obama was bragging here a few years ago, that he had pretty much facilitated the black farmers getting a $2.5 or $3.5 billion settlement, Brother Ed?
Yeah, that's not true.
It turns out that it's not true, and they haven't gotten the money. And the USDA is trying to appropriate their land, take it from them. So don't be fooled by their claim that they won the lawsuit, but the USDA and the government, because they're the government, is fighting against it, and they haven't given up a dime yet, as far as I know.
A lot of those lawyers have gotten paid. But
The lawyers have gotten paid, but the farmers are not getting anything. Right. African-centered education for children of African descent. You heard the presentation from our sister Chandra Witherspoon. We strongly in support of African-centered education for children of African descent by whatever means are possible. By whatever means are possible. If it's distance learning like you were talking about today earlier, Brother Anthony, then so be it. If it's virtual schools, as my wife was suggesting, so be it. But somehow or other, we have got to wrest control of the education or the miseducation of our children from the forces of oppression who are destroying our children, and take that back and take it upon ourselves to educate and develop our children. Support for black physicians. Apparently, I didn't know this until Dr. Myers was telling me about it, but there is an active campaign going on in this country to undermine, and where they think they can get away with it, to de-license black doctors. Now, that one, I admit, I didn't even know about that. But obviously, I know I have a difficult time finding a black doctor because the insurance companies now dictate who your doctors are. You don't just go out and pick your own doctor anymore. The insurance company, whoever's providing your insurance, that's who tells you who you're, or at least they give you a listing of doctors who are a part of their network, and you got to choose among them. And all of them happen to tend to be foreigners. Figure if they were good doctors, they'd be practicing in their own country. Support for African American media ownership. As you know, they've taken away a lot of the ownership of media properties, especially television, is just about all gone. And now almost all of the radio programs been, I shouldn't say taken away, have been, shall we say, white folks have got them. Whether they took them or whether they bought them, I don't know. But we're losing them fast. So we want to support the effort to increase the number of black folk, or black owned, I should say, especially radio and television stations, and pay college athletes for their labor. Mm-hmm. Absolutely insane that the NCAA pays themselves, coaches, administrators, mm-hmm. and everybody, and then underwrites the cost of the non-revenue generating sports, which tend not to have any black students participating in it, from money generated by these brothers getting out there jeopardizing, broken this, broken that, and broken the other. And most of these brothers, of course, never make it to the pros anyway. So the idea that they are student athletes and eventually are going to go into the pros and make a bunch of money is misleading at best. Mm-hmm. So we're joining those people who say and insist that it's absolutely wrong for the NCAA and for the universities and colleges in America to claim or to continue to claim that student athletes or athletes who play in these revenue generating sports, namely football and basketball, are actually student athletes and not employees of the school. But that's what they are. They generate that revenue. So we're supporting this claim. That's just a continuation of it. Frequently asked questions. I'm not going to go into the frequently asked questions because y'all can see those for yourselves. Go on to the next one. That's it? Okay. All right. I know everybody's about to snooze here, but I will still say if anybody has any questions or comments, I'll answer them. If not, we'll go ahead and start packing up for tonight. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Where are the planks available for? Where are the planks? Are they available on the website?
Yeah, they're on the website. Oh, by the way, can people go on the website and print off?
I can make a PDF. Yes.
Pardon?
I can make that PDF. I do that tomorrow.
Okay, all right. Because things like these slides and for example,
yes,
we would like for our people to be able to access it. Okay, anything else? All right, I want to thank you all for taking the time to come and spend, this weekend with us. It's been a long day, but I hope you feel that it's been instructive and fruitful. And you've learned some things, and you've seen up close and personal the kind of talent, skill, and ability we have amongst us. And everybody that is here has the potential to become a change agent in this country and throughout the world on behalf of the uplift and advancement of our people. And I would hope that you all will see fit to double down on your commitment to be on the case to make sure that we win, because we can win. This is winnable. Yep. This is winnable. And I tried to show that with these comparisons of how our numbers could compare to other numbers of other entities in this country that have a lot of influence because of their numbers. And our numbers would be comparable, and in some cases, as you saw, even greater than some of those other folks' numbers. And the quality of our people, our membership would be better than anything we up against. So if we can't win with that formula, we deserve to lose. Okay, Sister Monica, you want to wrap up?
Oh, how am I supposed to wrap up? What do I need to do?
Well, for one thing, you can tell folks what we're going to be doing tomorrow.
Okay.
And where, because you were supposed to check with the guy, for example.
He has not responded, so we're just going to go with it. Here's the issue. My flight leaves tomorrow at 2:00 p.m. And I need to be on the train because I'm not comfortable with just allowing an hour between.
I'm going to take you back to, because you got to go to Fort Lauderdale. Mm-hmm. I'll take you back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't want you to have to catch that train.
Okay.
No, that would be kind of ragged.